Spring 1508, Rome, the Vatican Palace. Michelangelo was holding back his fury. His hands were made for carving stone, for splitting marble and breathing life into it. That was his conviction. But now the Pope had given his command. Paint the ceiling. I am a sculptor, not a painter. Those words rose to his throat and stopped there. Michelangelo already had his fame. The Pietà, completed when he was just 25. That moment when white marble seemed to breathe. The David, begun in 1501 and completed in 1504. All of Florence stood before it and held their breath. He was the greatest sculptor in the world, and he believed that was enough. Pope Julius II did not accept refusal. He was known as the Warrior Pope, a man who led military campaigns without hesitation to restore papal territories. He had stood on battlefields, sword in hand, driving the Vatican's power to its peak. And this man commanded, stop work on the tomb, paint the ceiling. There was no choice. Michelangelo fell silent, and he accepted, reluctantly. But in that moment, no one knew that this reluctance was about to bring forth the greatest artistic miracle in human history. Michelangelo stood inside the chapel and looked up at the ceiling. From floor to ceiling, the height reached nearly 20 meters. Scaffolding would have to be built up close to that ceiling, and he would have to work upward facing upon it, day after day. A vast expanse spanning hundreds of square meters. Fill it alone, the Pope was saying. Something inside him cried out in quiet anguish. Why me? First, the scaffolding had to be built. Michelangelo rejected the existing design outright. Standing columns would destroy the chapel's function. He designed it himself. A cantilevered bridge-style scaffold projecting horizontally from the walls. A structure that preserved the chapel's function while allowing a man to reach the ceiling. The sculptor was also an architect. He had to design a composition on a scale no one had ever attempted. Michelangelo opened the Old Testament, Genesis, the story of God creating heaven and earth, the great flood of Noah, the sins of man, and the wrath of God. And the prophets. Inside his mind, a blueprint began to take shape. 9 scenes across the center, prophets and sibyls seated on either side. Heroes of the Old Testament at each corner. Hundreds of figures arranged across a vast ceiling. Unsatisfied with the skill of his assistants, he chose to execute nearly all of the painting with his own hand. For a perfectionist, compromise was not an option. And so the struggle began. Fresco is a technique of painting on wet plaster. Each day's section, the giornata, had to be completed before it dried. There was no going back. Michelangelo stood on the scaffolding and bent his neck back as far as it would go. He raised his arms toward the ceiling. His entire body arched like a bow. Paint dripped down onto his face, into his eyes, his nose, his lips. He did this every single day. His body began to cry out. His neck slowly lost its ability to move. His back was in constant pain. His eyes, forever straining upward, began to distort his vision. Michelangelo himself recorded this suffering in a poem written around 1509. He left in words the agony of days spent holding his body bent like a bow. According to accounts from this period, even when reading letters, he had to hold the paper above his head to read it. His neck could no longer face forward. His body was breaking apart. But his hands never stopped. Yet on the ceiling, a miracle was beginning to take form. God creates light. God divides water from land. God gives life to Adam. That single instant at the fingertip, God's right hand reaching toward Adam's left. The narrow gap between 2 fingers. Almost touching, but not quite. In that gap, Michelangelo imprisoned the moment of creation. The sculptor understood the human body better than anyone. The hands that had carved life from stone were now painting life into a ceiling. 1510. When part of the scaffolding was removed, the people were struck speechless. No one had ever seen a ceiling like this. A mythic sense of scale. Human forms rendered as though every muscle were alive. a composition that seemed to thrust itself out across space. This was not painting. Michelangelo had been sculpting in paint, creating 3 dimensions on a flat surface. Only a sculptor could have done this. Something strange was happening. As the work moved into its later half, the figures began to change. Compared to those of the first half, the later figures were enormous. The muscles grew more powerful, the poses more daring. Michelangelo was growing while he painted the ceiling. 4 years of struggle were transforming him. The sculptor had become a painter and was becoming one of the greatest painters in human history. When will it be finished? The Pope sent messengers again and again. Michelangelo's answer was always the same. It will be finished when it is finished. The Pope himself climbed the scaffolding on one occasion and pressed him for progress. Michelangelo answered, "I will come down when it is done." This man would not compromise, not even for the Pope. It is said that the unveiling was arranged to coincide with All Saints' Day, November 1st, in the autumn of 1512. The doors of the chapel opened. The people entered, and every one of them was frozen in place. No one could find their voice. Cardinals wept. Artists fell to their knees. Ordinary citizens stood rooted to the ground, staring up at the ceiling. Nearly 4 years. Hundreds of figures. A ceiling spanning hundreds of square meters. Nearly all of it created by a single pair of hands. Michelangelo had been alone. Sounds of admiration drifted in from deep within the chapel. He must have felt something complicated. It was work he had not wanted, work that had been forced upon him. Yet for 4 years, he had not compromised. Even as his body broke apart, he had not cut corners. Why? Not because it was his job. Because it was his work. Whether he had wanted it or not was irrelevant. Once begun, it had to be perfect. 25 years later, Michelangelo returned to the same chapel, this time by his own will. He was 61 years old. The wounds in his back had never healed. The pain in his neck had never disappeared. Even so, he took on the altar wall, the Last Judgment, the moment all of humanity stands before God. Autumn, 1541. The Last Judgment was unveiled. Hundreds of figures filled the wall from edge to edge. Christ the Virgin, apostles, angels, demons, and condemned souls. And many were nude. High-ranking clergy of the Vatican erupted in protest. Do not hang obscene paintings in the chapel. But in his Neoplatonic philosophy, the human body was the very image of God, and to paint that truth was the artist's sacred mission. At 66, he still would not compromise for anyone. 500 years have passed since then. Even today, thousands of people gather at the Sistine Chapel. From every corner of the world, people of every religion, every culture, and every one of them looks up at the ceiling. The vivid colors we see today owe much to the major restoration carried out in the late 20th century, from 1980 to 1994, which removed centuries of accumulated grime. The way the work appears to us has itself been updated through history, including debates over how to evaluate the restoration. And yet some things do not change. This was work Michelangelo did not want, work that was forced upon him, the work of a man who said, "I am a sculptor, not a painter." And as fate would have it, 2025 marks the 550th anniversary of Michelangelo's birth. Across 5 centuries, his struggle continues to speak to us. Here lies a profound paradox. So what can we learn from this story? Michelangelo leaves us something to carry. It is not only work we desire that produces a masterpiece. Even in a situation forced upon us, we can choose not to compromise. Even as our bodies break apart, we can choose not to stop our hands. Even when no one is watching, we can choose to pursue perfection. This is a matter of will, not environment will. Michelangelo began unwillingly, but once begun, he never stopped making it his work. That difference produced a miracle that still moves people 500 years later. So let me put a question to you. Behind every masterpiece lies a struggle no one else knows. What would you do if the work you dread most today turned out to hold your greatest potential? And one more thing. When we cannot choose our circumstances, what is left to us? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. The stories of decisions and struggles left behind by history's giants. This channel continues to unearth the blueprints of the men and women who moved history. What they thought, what they chose, and what they sacrificed. By confronting those questions, your own choices and strategies begin to change. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, and let's experience the next story together. Until next time.